When I was first starting out, I was a piano performance major, and I never thought of myself as having this creative function. I knew I had it, but it was kind of hammered down. When you're in academia, they kind of tell you to stick to the score and stay in the box. And this is what you do, and you all roses are red and violets are blue, and Beethoven's played this way and Brahms is played this way, and do not deviate. And yet I found myself getting in trouble for deviating and trying new things and being more interested at times in different interpretations of the classics, or people who were reinterpreting or rethinking that all. And then I got involved in enjoying jazz and always have been in church music. So all these different intersections were beginning to happen for me. And you're just, because you were taught, I believe, and most of you come through some music, I'm assuming, in college or at least piano lessons or something, you almost revere those classic composers so much that you don't feel worthy to even pick up a pen because, oh my gosh, Chopin exists. Why would I ever write a piano piece? No way I'm going to write a nocturne, B-flat nocturne. How could I possibly even, I'm ashamed to even look at the piano. You know, by the time you get out of school, you're just crippled and paralyzed with this. And yet the same unction that Chopin had to write is in every one of us. And I believe that. I believe it to the core. Now, he was, of course, a genius, not taking anything away from him. But his students used to stand behind him while he improvised and wrote down his etudes. So it sounds like to me he had trouble with finale too. All the great composers were utilitarian at times. We pretend that they lived on a pedestal of just walk. They fell out of bed every day and went da 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 da, you know. And they did it. They were meeting needs in the community, and their different kinds of patrons and things were commissioning them. And on one of my trips, my journeys with Joe, I went to Salzburg, and you know, when you're the tour leader and you have the potential to bring 100 people to places, they give you stuff. So we went, this tour guide said, this restaurant wants to buy you lunch and show you around. And so we were going to have this big string quartet thing from the Mozarteum there, and a big banquet with period costumes and, you know, that kind of. And he took me into this restaurant. The restaurant was so old, the oldest restaurant in Europe that was still open. And he was showing me where the Mozart family ate every night. And he pointed to this podium, the stage area, where Eine kleine Nachtmusik was first performed. You know, and I just kind of got these chills that just went over me. And yet I go, God, he was playing for dinner. He was playing for a party. Just like I used to do, you know. It put it in a magical setting, and yet it was a practical setting to say, here's a functional musician, a guy who was making his living at it, and to go to the cathedral and see why he wrote in the Requiem and the way he wrote the Requiem, and you know, it's blah blah blah. You learn so much. You are placed where you are, and your background is what it is, and it's unchangeable, and it's so diverse in this room. If we went around and talked about where you were coming from, every one of them would be different. And I think that's the miracle of diversity. We always want everybody to agree. You look at Facebook, everybody, they want us to 100% agree and march in the same way. That's a terrible thing. Our creativity pushes against that. And to respect each other's song is an extraordinary challenge and a gift to each of us to be so humbled and have the gift of listening for each other. And that's what we try to encourage. And once you kind of get past the fact that I'm unworthy and I don't really know what I'm doing, there are steps that you can take to begin the process of becoming an excellent, useful writer and arranger. And so that's what we hope to do when we have these conferences. I'd like to know, because to address, I know some of it because you're publishing with me now, Creative Monsters and some of you. So, but I'd like to know a little bit about where you are and ask your question, because in an hour is going to go by very, very quick of me sitting here and telling you what you already know. But I would really like to go to the heart of where you are in your journey with being a creative person, taking it outside performance and actually being the person who thinks up the idea. And I just want to encourage you, because in this room right now, we could actually, through publication, the miracle of publication, or the miracle of arranging and composing, impact things and change things. Think about how we have a poverty of imagination right now. A poverty of imagination in our sacred culture. And I think it's just our cultural zeitgeist anyway. It's just everybody has to dress this way or whatever. We think that we're diverse, but we really aren't. When you listen and you observe, we tend to be conformist right now. It's just because of social media or what have you. I don't know. It's just things swing back and forth. And we need imagination. And you say, well, I write really imaginative, and they turn me down every time, because publishers are the worst to do that. We want to publish something to stay in business, and that engine kind of funnels things into the same type of shape and size and sound. But if we can take the uniqueness of what your voice is, and you won't write like me, and you won't write like Michael, we'll all write different. But there are certain things that have to be in place for the thoughts of your heart to go through all of this process of being edited and recorded and marketed and engraved. And I mean, there's about 32 different steps, and we'll walk you through those. We won't do it today because it's beyond boring, but they're absolutely essential to get it from your heart to the heart of the listener through an interpreter you will never meet. You're a choir director. You don't hang around Tom Fecky, but you've got to do justice to His Majesty and glory. And then you've got people out there who have to understand as much as possible what Tom was trying to convey through the message in that music, you see. Wow, what a miracle any of it is. Heck, we have to do to even figure out what dead people meant when they wrote, So that process, to facilitate that process, composing is the conduit that, and arranging is the conduit that allows for that transfer of emotional information to the heart of your listener. And the more that you can streamline that, the more that you can, through excellence of arranging, excellence of theory, excellence of form and analysis and all of those things, the more that you can facilitate that, the more successful you'll be. And I love sitting in these reading sessions. I know I'm like the watcher in the back as they take each piece out, and I'm looking and I'm watching, I'm listening and connecting the dots to what has, the magic moments, those that challenge but are worth it, those that challenge and are not worth it, and the people who toss it to the side about 8 measures in. It's valuable to watch that and observe it and be authentic with it, because that's what they do to my music too, and that's what they'll do to your music. And you have to be geared to handle that part of it. But I want to go around the room and then ask, introduce yourself, tell me about your writing. Are you published? Are you not published? Do you not even want? This is not about necessarily publishing. It's about getting started. And if publishing is an exclamation point, people always look at, if I could just get something in print. Getting in print is not the goal. Getting performed is the goal. Right. Publishing is a conduit to performance. But we tend to look and put publishing at the end. If I could just get something, well, you can go get something in print right now. Just pay somebody to engrave it professionally. I can record it for you. I'll charge you $1,000, and we get that thing sounding like $1 million. You see, you can do that. Publishing is not as a magical mystery thing. It's an act of will, and you can do that on your own, and many people are very successfully having self-publishing. There's a little bit of an ego boost when Hal Leonard says they're going to take something, because 100,000 people are going to look at it in the next year. But nonetheless, all of that is for the performance. So even if you're not in print, quote unquote, and you're getting good performances at churches and in your congregation, your meeting needs, hey, that's what you want. So I don't want to make this only about publishing, but let's go around, find out what you are, and then ask your question. I'll jump off of the question, and we'll start a dialogue. So, who wants to go first? Just, I don't want to make everybody say anything if you're one of those shy people, but.
It's the yellow shirt.
I know, but I just know you're not.
Greg Gathright, I'm Director of Music at Lakewood United Methodist Church. I have had some pieces performed, nothing published. I wrote a children's speech for the Huntsville Children's Choir, they performed. I've written some small one-page chorus type things, but never an octavo other than that other piece. My problem or my concern is finding lyrics. I mean, I've got all kinds of melodies running through my head, you know.
Anybody in here write lyrics? Well, it looks like
I feel his pain.
Okay, he's looking for them. That's one of the interesting things about the symposium. We find people that start collaborating, and that's been a very enriching thing to see. When you have 70 people in the room, you're bound to, have somebody who can be a partner in your quest. But if I can jump off of the one thing that you said, if you were looking to bust the door down of publishing, lyricists are very needed. Now, my son just published his first 4 or 5 lyrics. It came out, and he's very talented with words. And I tried to tell him that. I said, son, we've lost 2 or 3 major lyricists, Paul Williams, Brian Jeffrey Leach, and others who were just, providing lots and lots of text for the marketplace. And so much of what we see isn't chorally appropriate. I mean, it might be great poetry, but great poetry doesn't always make a good song. You've got to know when to pull the trigger and when the crescendo is going to happen and all those kinds of things. And poetry doesn't have those restraints on it, and so it makes it a little harder to sometimes to find that. And then there are just these insipid things that we see all the time, saying the same thing in the same way over and over and over and over again. So I feel your pain on that, and if anybody would love to develop their lyric writing, that would probably be. Lyrics are hard to know because truth is truth, and I talk to lyricists all the time, and I look them straight in the eye because I always tell the truth. Because everybody deserves the truth, right? So I try to do it gently, but I'll put their lyrics up there and I'll say, well, this line doesn't work here. Oh, that's right out of Scripture. I'll say, now listen to me, that line does not work. That Scripture was not there to me. That's not a song. It's not a song in English, you can't say vomit in a choral anthem. It's just not going to work. But that's always the excuse. Well, it's right out of the Bible, but it's more than that. A song has, a whole universe to its own. So, and I saw we're kind enough to share some of your stuff with me before, and it's really good. A lot of what you have to be honest with yourself about, and some of you may be in this category. I'm not saying you are, but I'm just using this as a jump on.
You notice he pointed to me.
You may be at level 5 of songwriting or tune writing, because sometimes people just are born tunesmiths. I mean, like you showed, we read through one of your pieces the other day, and it was going back, incredible melody, awesome tune. And they were right, it was. I mean, I would have been proud. I may guarantee Craig Courtney would have been proud to have written that tune. And it wasn't quite in the form that we needed, and he was kind enough to just do some adjusting and, blah, blah, blah. Now we were going to publish this piece. But a lot of times you'll get a rejection letter, or you won't maximize a concept because your songwriting or your melody writing is at level 10, your lyric writing is at level 6, and your arranging is level 2, your piano part is, or your part, your voice leading is bad, or your ranges are. So sometimes you've got to go for the part that is really, really good, and start there and let that be your gesture, and then work on the lazy eye, the things that aren't quite working as well. And then when those things start evening out, then your piece of music begins to really just feel natural and organic instead of forced. It's possible. It's not impossible. It's done. Sometimes editors help you with that. Sometimes collaborators and arrangers can do that. While you're working, I tell some of my students, while you're working on beefing up your piano writing, don't give up on it, but just while you're doing that, write some great songs and let me put them with a good arranger, you know. Sell the song if that's what you are at this point, what you're more advanced in that area than others. So it may be, too, as you're sensing a need in lyrics, maybe you're a lyricist. Maybe that's an area you develop. Or I know that you like to write some fellowship courses and things like that, or worship courses. And there is a great need for songs that are congregational opportunities. We get a lot of artful arrangements and things like that. But, you know, if I look at my top 10 list at Shawnee and would share that with you, you'd see that sometimes the simple things are the ones that are really connecting from, you know, simple things. You have 3 minutes, this little window of 3 minutes max to make an impact in the service. And sometimes it just, you don't have enough time to write your ninth symphony first. And so keep that in mind as you're developing your next project, you know. Here's another thing I might say too. Don't try, even though you're tempted to, don't, every time you change something, remember this, and it'll help you. Your old version still exists. You just have another different attempt. A lot of people are, oh, that's my favorite measure. Okay, well, write a version without your favorite measure in it. That we didn't do. I'm not taking it out and burning it at the stake. I mean, try a different way. If you look at Beethoven's sketches for the Fifth Symphony, he has da da da, ba 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 ba. He has lots of different kinds of gestures until he finally hit it home with dun 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 dun, and that was the one that he settled on. If you listen to the choral fantasy of Beethoven, it is written several years before he started the Ninth Symphony. It's a piano concerto for choir and orchestra. So all of a sudden he's interested in choir. In a piano concerto, that's crazy. Sounds a little bit like. So you can hear him working out his hymn of joy 3 years early in a piano concerto. All that to say, you just have to remember, there's many different versions. It's hard to think about. The Awakening, my piece, The Awakening, has sold 1 million copies, we're nearly about 950,000 copies. And there are several, believe me, versions of that in my sketchbooks. One that doesn't have the descending bass line that was suggested to me by a friend of mine who, when I was playing it for him, says, you know, it's too static during the ostinato for so long. Why don't you try a descending bass line? I went, that's a good idea. Oh man, it just came alive. Well, I listened to people who were listening to the work and responding honestly to me. But I love going back and looking at those early sketches. So as you are going through and writing your pieces, either work on your next piece with some of the things you're learning, or go back and say, okay, this is the way I wrote it. Now let me see, what if I take the chorus and added a hymn here? You know, just try different ways so that you get right laser beam into what the best parts of your work were. And if you're really honest, and you give it the time, things will kind of emerge and come out of that. I think, or at least it's my experience.
My name's Glenn Ernestly. I'm a church musician. I teach part-time at university. I've got some stuff published over the years in different genres. I would say probably piano parts are not my strong point.
I would say, how many of you feel like you're weak in your piano writing? Yeah. It's okay. You're not alone. Do you know that some of the best arrangers in Nashville don't know how to write their own piano parts? We have to take the recordings and transcribe them. You are not alone. I don't do my own orchestrations. I can, but I'm slow as Christmas molasses. I can write 4 songs at the time it takes me to do one orchestration. So I just sit down with Brant and say, I'm thinking French horn here. What do you think? Yep, it's a good idea. Okay, make the cello here. Okay, sure. Brant is a genius. So I have surrendered my inadequacy to his excellence, and it's been nothing but joy ever since. And it works to my strength. So that's not to say I can't do orchestrations. I certainly have done them and enjoy them when I have a luxury of time. But don't feel like you're not a complete composer just because you're in good company if you don't write your own piano parts. If that's not going to be something that pulls you back down and say I'm not a composer, then let go of it and learn to collaborate or write songs with lead sheets. Give a feeling for the accompaniment and send it to the publisher. Not every publisher will work this way, but I believe in finding. Right now, one of our leading writers is a lady by the name of Patricia Mock, and she's a preacher's wife who's retired with a guitar, and she writes incredible, unbelievably beautiful melodies. See, even her chord choices are wrong sometimes, but the song just it gets all over you like stink on a dog. It's unbelievable. I hear it and I go, this lady totally understands what a 3-minute song is supposed to be about. It's like a sermon. It's like her husband's sermon. I guarantee you, sitting there listening to her husband's sermon has crafted her into a songwriter. Because a song is about one thing. And the one thing that a song has to be, and this is the way I do it, this is the way I diagram it. Here's your song. What are we going to write about today? What are we going to write about? Give me a subject.
Grace.
Oh, this is not going to work here. Grace, thank you. That's what we should probably always write about, huh? Okay, and pretend that's Jupiter, all right? Everything in that song is in the gravity pool of grace, that central thing. So if you begin to write your verses, your bridges, and all that, there are things that grace brings to mind, and they can. That's one move away. Say when I say grace, what do you think of? What's some other words that just
mercy?
Mercy.
Forbearance, even.
Forbearance.
That's a good lyrical word.
Yeah, but keep going. Come on, guys. Quick. Don't think about it too much. What's grace? Grace is
Undeserved.
Forgiveness.
Yeah, unmerited.
forgiveness. Yeah, there you go. Now, it doesn't matter. If there's no right or wrong, it's like a Rorschach test, right?
Right.
And so you collect a bunch of satellites, and then you look back at them and say, that one won't work. That one. And then you start eliminating things. You've got 4 incredible concepts. There's your, you can work with that. Each of those will have a little satellite, all right, that you can develop. And you'll get your power words and your power phrases. I do that, and Joan will tell you, just my secretary, she has to sit behind me in a desk and do her work while I sit and compose my work all day long. I don't know how she does. Well, I think there may be drugs involved, to be honest with you. But not only do I do this with lyrics, but I do it with my music. Those of you who are more musical in your approach, you'll see that motive is like that. You build motive is the DNA of your piece. And so it's not like I want to wander around here and I feel good about this, I feel good about that. But once you make that gesture, the whole world changes, doesn't it? And you have to respond to your opening measures. So this gravity concept is very, very strong and important. And what happens is most people chase a rabbit around the room. They start writing too much stuff. And really, it's very, very simple. If you listen to last night's Craig Courtney's piece, the one from Ruth,
Yes.
what a melody. But if you look at it and you took away all the decoration, like a piano accompaniment and all that, and you just looked at it as a lead sheet with some chord symbols and that song's very simple. With these leaping and beautiful intervals on the words like death, and I shall die, or what was the line? Whether thou die, where you die, I will die. And that's when he put the intervals leaping for the expressiveness of it. Perfectly timed it. Okay, whatever the word was he was saying, the intervals, there was cooperation between the music and the text. in a very, very simple superstructure. Then he began to craftily add harmony and everything. But you don't have a good foundation for your song. All the fancy techniques in the world is not going to make your song any more accepted to the heart. You have to build a strong foundation for your house of song before you begin to decorate. And I think most people try to think of decoration first. And I understand that, and you maybe have to have that in the back of your mind. But it's all about keeping true to your concept. And if you start getting too many further away from this, you have some problems. And a lot of times you'll see that because the first verse will be in a different tense. Or you're talking all about grace and all of a sudden you're in the manger. We get this all the time. In the same verse, it'll jump around the story too much, you see. Because you're controlled by a rhyme. Rhymes are like needful. But you'll see somebody saying, well, I couldn't think of it. I can go in 5 seconds and circle the lines that were controlled by the need to rhyme something. Because they never have that natural, oh, this is what comes next. This is what comes next. So anyway, trying to find out what the focus of the piece is and making everything serve that, Nashville would call it a hook, but that central purpose of the song. Not only texturally, but also musically, so that the song doesn't chase rabbits melodically or like that. And you'll notice that, like, if you start a song musically in this universe, for instance, like if I decide that this song is going to have the characteristic of a minor 5 instead of a major 5, which I use this technique a lot. So. Now if I get that kind of going in people's ears, it didn't quite, what was that and why? Now it doesn't mean I can't use the major 5. But it better be a word like light or some reason why that chord has suddenly been changed. The universe has suddenly been shifted into that new chord. So having an idea about even the harmonic gravity pool you want a piece to be in. If is it going to have is it going to be that? Or is it going to be... Is it going to have that kind of characteristic? That puts it in a different genre type. I see a lot of times that people will suddenly go at the end of a piece that has been pretty progressive. They'll do something like, that sounds like the end of a Gaither song, yeah. And I love Gaither, but especially if you just went. So you want to be faithful and consistent with your style choices once that song takes on it begins to grow. You don't want to turn a symphony into a folk song and a folk song into a fugue. Sometimes that can be very annoying. Okay, I'm just jumping off of things. Did you have a specific, I know that you're thinking of jumping back into the pool here and getting back into some writing. The publishing industry's changed since the last time. I know you were working with Lillinus a little bit, but we're half of what we used to be before the recession. And it's a bunch of cultural things, but the sales are about half of what they were at one time, and the players have been dying like flies. Part of it is the contemporary movement away from choirs. If you think about it, it's not hard to understand from a business model. We had 50 in the choir, and now we have 4 on the podium, you see. And so we used to sell 50 copies of music. Now, if we're lucky, we sell 4 copies of music. Most likely, it's just actually been lifted off the radio, and somebody scratched down 3, 4 chords. I don't need to get the publisher involved in that. I'll just write it out myself by hand because it's so simple. So now you know why we're half. There's certainly that. And then there's this cultural kind of negativity towards church, because churches are split over this issue or that issue. And when you divide the pots in different ways, you take yourself away from worship and you get into dogma. And what as musicians are always about worship. I mean, that we are the Levitical connection to the worship moment. And so that's the reason we kind of rise above all those dogmatic issues for the most part. I mean, we may have personal opinions, but our job is to get people singing and get people connecting and providing functional music. But that has changed a lot in the last 5-6 years, and it's taken its toll on your ability to connect with that industry. That said, we have some notable successes. I'm happy to work for a company that's solvent and doing well and still growing. We sort of bottomed out, and we're starting that move back up now. And we are an open house. Heather Sorensen, who you know very well, has been at this conference, was an unsolicited manuscript. I insist on it. Not a lot of publishers do that. They say, no, we'll ask you if we need you. We'll call you. Well, how are they going to know who you are? Well, they wouldn't have had Brad Nix, who walked into my symposium, and he's now second in command at Shawnee. They wouldn't have had Heather Sorensen. They wouldn't have had the 25 composers that came out of the symposium. So there are still houses that will look at unsolicited manuscripts, and they'll get you your rejection letter right back within 3 or 4 months. But you understand what I'm saying. There are a lot of houses who just don't have the personnel now to go through all of that material anymore because they've downsized, and it's unfortunate, but I told you, I'll tell you the truth. So it may be a little rougher road to try to get in with some of the publishers, but it's worth it still. Yes, it is. To be able to see your name in print and to see people being respond to your music. I still get excited every time it comes in the door. And it does come in the door, doesn't it, Joan? 1,800 copyrights so far. She has to file them all, 50 free copies. Oh my gosh, my mouth runneth over. So it is something to consider. Somebody else, questions, throw them out. We'll use it as a jumping off place.
How do you collaborate with other people? I see when you have something that you've collaborated. How does that process work? What does that look like?
Well, I'm different. Like Robert Sterling hates to be in the room with a person. I love being in the room with a person. I just love people. So I'm a very social kind of guy, I guess. And so I end up being stimulated by the ideas that fly. And I don't feel ownership of my own work, so it doesn't bother me that, I mean, I don't even put my own name on most of my work, because I have 10 different pseudonyms that I write under. Like Brad's piece last night, which I think is one of the most exquisite melodies that he, Listen to My Heart. Roger Thornhill, I'm Roger Thornhill, so, I wrote the text. I was back there beaming that people liked it, and they didn't know I wrote it, so. And I wrote it kind of with him in mind because of what he was going through in his life, so I just write out of my own experiences. But anyway, so I'm the personality type that having a mixing pot, a collaborative experience is rewarding. David Anger, I've got dozens of collaborators that I work with. Others are more solitary creatures and prefer to kind of move their chess people around, and then when needful, they move into the stream and reluctantly have to go through the process of rewrites and things like that. So I think they're all valid, but when Paul Williams would come to the house for a week and he'd sit at the end of my piano and go, oh gosh, that's beautiful. Oh, really? And he goes, really? Oh yeah. Well, so I can sit and write all day long, and somebody sitting there stroking my head like that going, it's great, it's great. I respond well to praise. But and we became very close friends, and so the process was like a gathering. We watch a ball game and we go write a song, kind of thing. So we became buddies through that process. But there are other times it's very professional, and they show up and we write together. And we've even written a song in class before. It's a whole group. I said, I don't know how we're going to divide the royalties on this one. Oh, I'm going to get it. But I think it's valid because I feel like my music goes to different places with each of my. I can see it. When I write with David Agerman, I write completely differently than when I write with Rob Sterling, or when I write with Heather, or any of my Victor Johnson. That's what's it. I highly recommend it. You work out the details ahead of time. Most of the time, I always just split things down the middle, even though sometimes I might do 80% of the work. Well, the next time I might do 40%, and it all comes out. But if you start arguing over, I wrote 37 notes versus, you know, you wrote 42 notes, then you're gonna, eventually that's not gonna work. Just kind of go into it and say, whatever comes out of this, you know, let's split it. That's my recommendation. But I will say this about working on your arranging chops. Arranging is so rare. Excellence in arranging is the hardest and the final thing, and probably the weakest link if you want to talk about what people are lacking. And you look at it, there's only a dozen or so composers who do this at that level, who write and arrange. You'll give half of your royalty away to your arranger. So it is costly in that regard if you have to have a collaborator. That, on the other hand, if you could write twice as much, or if that arranger's name brings more sales to you and adds to your personal gravitas, that's a good business decision. But go into it with your eyes open that there is the surrendering of certain parts of the creative process, the financial ends of it, as well as you just have to be a collaborative type of person and not confrontational or threatened by a suggestion. You know, and you have to just be honest with yourself. I'm somebody who, you know, I'm kind of an alpha male sort of thing, but I don't have any problem listening to other people's critique of me. I mean, I don't know why. I guess because my dad he's pretty tough on me, you know, and he was my baseball coach, that kind of thing. Did you call that staying down on the ball? You know. So I'm hitting 462, just like I thought, not 500. Okay.
Well, logistics is the problem a lot of times for collaboration, because some people prefer to work one-on-one, some people prefer to work email, but that's really difficult.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've even worked Skype, and thank goodness for the finale and the ways that can instantly connect you with somebody who's not in the room. And we do that a lot. I mean, most of when you send a piece into Hal Leonard, I'm not in charge of review. And Joan is we call her Dream Crusher. That's her name. Joan's not a musician, so don't feel bad when you get a rejection letter with her name on it. Well, she's just the guinea pig we put to make her. We don't want to be the one to tell somebody bad news. She gets all of the things, and we have a review panel all around the country. They don't used to in the old days. Y'all sat in a room. And I think Lorenz still does that. They get together twice or 3 times a year, and they actually sing through everything for 4 or 5 days. We just send it off to these people, and I don't even know who's on the committee sometimes. It changes. And they fill out the form, and yes, no, maybe, circle things that they say, would they consider doing this? Then they send it back, and poor Joan has to go through it all, and she puts it on my desk with scores, and I say, okay, well. And even if you get one accepted, at that point I get involved. Somebody would send in The Lord is my shepherd. Well, I'm sorry. Even though they say yes on this, we got a piece called The Lord is my shepherd, and last time we had the Lord is my lamb and my shepherd or something. We got too much shepherds going on here. So I have to reject it, you know, and that does kind of come from our office when we don't have a need for what it was you sent in. But fortunately, you do get a good adjudication of it, kind of without all of that, and sometimes we'll ask you if we can hold it or what was it? Change the whole text, of that piece. That's right. So why did I do that? I forget.
You needed a shepherd piece.
Oh, I needed a shepherd piece. Yeah. I mean, they loved his piece, but I couldn't find a place for it. It came to me as accepted, except for this section was too hard or whatever. They had some concerns. So I said, well, Michael, I've worked with him before. He'll at least consider it. I'll call him. But I said, guys, well, we don't need this piece. What was it originally? It was, How We Love Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, and John Purefoy is writing one to Brother James Eyre for our next, that's one of his assignments. So I knew I couldn't take both How I Love Jesus in that regard. So I got the hymn book out. I found a new text. I said, what do we need? And they said, we need a Shepherd Sunday. We have a big chart. And we have to have one for Christ the Good Shepherd every year, and nobody had submitted it. And we found my shepherd does supply my need, fit beautifully into your new melody, and he was kind enough to know that he could have a different version of this piece that he had written, which was quite lovely when he first sent it in. There was nothing wrong with it. And now he has a brand spanking new piece that actually meets an incredibly perfect need in the crop. And guess what? Acceptance letter. So, excellent piece, flexibility, concept that was needful for the links that we had publishing, and so that'll be very successful. We'll make a lot of reading session because it's the only one we have. On the back of a publication we call worship songs. Do you get worship songs in the mail? It's our excerpt CD. Some people don't like excerpts at all, that's fine. But we published 86 new things, so a lot of people like to do an overview and then go back and kind of flag things they want to listen all the way through to. So we publish it and send it out to 40,000 people. It's called Worship Songs. It's also available online. You can go to shawneepress.com or howleonard.com and you can download this. On the back are our categories. You can see the categories that I have to fill up. I have a big chart that Joan has made. You've probably seen that chart because you've been on my house.
Yes.
And I write in, when somebody gets, a piece gets accepted and contracted for, I put it in there, and once that category fills up, unless it's, Handel risen from the grave, it doesn't go, we don't go over that because I'm not budgeted. I have to create for each product a budget, and it's got to produce, so there's a lot of financial on my end that I have to juggle because I have to produce it, I have to engrave it, I have to edit it, I have to proof it, I have to design a cover, then promote it, and all that has to have a budget line item that goes with it. And just, who would have thought I should have paid attention in math? But so it's a $170 million company over the Hal Leonard is, and so Shawnee is a small part of that, and Hal Leonard Sacred's a little bit bigger part of that. But still, every product has to be justified. We spent $2,755. It better ding dong make $2,756. That's the job I have. So if you would look at those categories, I think you would find that to be very, very rewarding for you and very useful, because those categories are what we're looking for. And there's also some descriptive categories like SAB, two-part, children, multi-generational. There's all these kind of subcategories that we try to be balanced in our crop. Because I look at the crop, which ends up being 180 pieces a year, as a composition. Instead of notes, it's songs, and it grows and it crescendos and it has a theme, and they have copyrights and they have all kinds of things to give diversity, because I believe in diversity, and that's what our catalog was built on. So the worship songs. Also, here's an interesting. I used to tell people to join Inside, and I certainly would love for you to join Inside. It costs you $50 a year. You get every published piece plus full-length recordings sent straight to your house in a nice big box with a ribbon on it. So that way you would have it. You'd be able to study. But here's something for free. You can go and subscribe to our YouTube site. It's a brand new thing we just started called Score Play. And if you go to Shawnee or I think it's Hal Leonard Church, you can look and listen in completeness. And the page even flips for you. Every piece we publish from now on. It's going to be my full-length cantata. You can just sit and watch it and review it and just listen to it. And it'll flip every page as you go. Read the narration, whatever. And so this is a new way of us helping to market these things. And just go in and you put in your email, and every time we add a new piece, you'll get a little email. Hey, something's been added. So those of you who are publishing with us, your pieces will be up there from now on. And we're going to also go back to do back catalog here pretty soon. But I was trying to educate you to the need. So if you look at how many pieces are in certain categories, you'll see where we have a lot of material. And then you'll look over here and you'll see two-part mixed. It'll be one or two pieces. Because people don't want to mess with it. And it's hard to write an interesting piece with only 2 voices.
Right.
Not an easy thing. SAB, good way to break in, is writing things we don't get from arcades. Because they like to write the fancy stuff like we all do, But if you can write an incredible piece, we have a new piece called Peaceful Lullaby by Rebecca Fair. She's a girl I met in Austin. She's a composium lady. And she just wrote this precious lullaby. Just precious. I could never have written it because I'm not a mom. I mean, I hate to say it, but she just wrote it with this tenderness that just melted my heart when I saw it. Could not write a piano part if she fell out of bed onto a Steinway. And so I just put a beautiful piano part with it, decorated it, and just put a little this and that and tweaked it. dip tuck, nip tuck. And it's the 1-2 part, and people are just falling all over themselves. I can do this with my choir, I only got 8 people, you know. Well, there's about 10,000 churches in America that have 8 people on Sunday, and another 10,000 have 10 people. It adds up. So that may be a way of getting into it. And then when I first started out, I was known as a youth choir composer. You know, because I wrote a little bit more contemporary SAP stuff. Other questions? Anybody want to share their story? Yes, thank you.
Oh, hey, the praise bands use so few chords, as we were talking about yesterday, and that sometimes they use old hymns that are have really nice harmonies, and I don't mean to sound insulting, but they dumb them down. They dumb them down to the point that they are just, those hymns are not gonna last because they're
They've been
they're
gutted.
so boring. Yes, they've been gutted. And I just wonder if there's a need for someone to write a hymnal that praise bands could play, that guitarists wouldn't run away from, that would make it at least a little bit more interesting. Is there a need?
There is a need, and I'm working on a major project that is what I'm dubbing the Worship Encyclopedia. And it is a collection, which is essentially a history of praise and worship music, with other resources, like one of the volumes. Think of an encyclopedia, you know, and Michael W. Smith. You get all these volumes, and they're all going to be disc and digital. And each year you'll get a yearbook, just like a world book. So it's going to be a thing that you subscribe to, and it'll all be done in a certain format. One of the volumes is hymns, done up in a contemporary way so that they can be integrated. And there's all these little matrices. Is it matri? I don't know what it is. Where medleys can be put together, because that's a very important thing there. Things that like centered around grace. Every song, they'll have a little icon that in each of the books, and you could literally do a 1970s praise song from this book and connect with a hymn here, with a Matt Redman piece here, and they'll all be arranged by the same editorial hand with instrumentation and parts written out for your pianist and everything like that. It'll be a one-stop thing. You can print it out, and it'll all look the same and have the same level of difficulty in those kinds of concepts. So I agree, yes, there is a need for that, because I go and they just don't capture the heart of any of it. You know, I'm the kind of guy that says, well, if you can't beat them, let's figure out how to make them better. And so I don't see the practicing that goes into, I don't see the excellence of performance. I don't care about style. It's not contemporary I'm upset with, it's temporary I'm upset with. And when we don't give the best that we have within a stylistic genre. And part of it is just because some of these people have been thrown into this water and they've never played them. You know, me and you, we go way back. We played, you know, with combos all the time. We read lead sheets and such. But think about Miss Johnson down the street, who, you know, she's playing Bach and all this, and she doesn't know how to do that. So it's important for us to provide pedagogical resources for the developing praise team. I know it sounds goofy to think that, but I believe if they had a progression and proper materials, that we could raise the level of excellence in a contemporary worship service, and people would respond to it. I know it. Who doesn't respond to excellence?
And the other end of that spectrum is the lady down the street who is having to read out of a new hymnal, where she's trying to lead the congregation. They don't have a song leader, but she's trying to play. I have 3 students that are trying to do that are, well, one's younger, 2 are older, but they can't accompany the congregation because they can't read like most of us can, because we have more experience, but they can't digest the single vocal line and then the accompaniment that doesn't have a vocal line in it.
I know.
And, you know,
I know.
they're just mystified.
It is a mystified thing. Well, and we've lived through a transition, and that's why the materials haven't grown up as fast as the revolution, you know. And I mean, there's a lot of reason for that, but I think there is an absolute need for what you're talking about, and probably arrangers to rise up and you know, kind of reinvent the wheel with how to do that. And we see that in our publications. We have choral pieces of old hymns that we do up, and you know, Chris Tomlin does these things where he adds, you know, Amazing Grace in the middle of something and creates a new kind of hybrid. And our arrangers, you know, rearrange that for choir. So there's some usages outside just the praise team, chorally speaking. But I don't disagree with you. I know we got probably time for one more question, and I got who is it starting in an hour? Are they over there? When does the next reading session start? I just want to make sure. I probably have to introduce somebody.
You do.
At 9?
9:15.
9:15.
Okay, 9:15. We got time for some more.
What's your physical setup for composition?
Great
What do you do?
question. I use Finale, although there are others that use Sibelius, but I've always used Finale. It's pretty much our company's industry standard. I actually built my office for composition. My piano, I measured everything. I had my furniture made around exactly the aerodynamic distances from my piano here, and so I can look at the kids in the pool here and Joan's office. You know, I actually do all the piano recordings in my office so that there was room and the proper sonic environment there. But I use the Speedy Note entry, which requires a punch of a note on a Kurzweil, which is what I use, and a keystroke like a 5 or 4 or 3 to represent the note value. That for me works. If I know I'm going to do a series of you know, the same pattern or something, I might use Hyperscribe and play it in, because I'm pretty good at that. But I also have, and Tom Vecchi set this up for me, and he told me to set it up, and it's changed my life, and poor Joan has to deal with it, but I have collected over the years 100,000 copies of music, maybe, that are the publishers, the history of publishing since 1980. I've collected every piece of music, bought every one copy out of every library that's getting ready to throw things away, and I study it. I study the history of it. I know who's done the arrangements of that and who's not. And Joan, I say, okay, I'm going to have to do I've just got an assignment to arrange a folk song. Go find me every Irish folk song you can find. Bring out every book and every resource. And then when Shawnee Press moved to Nashville, they sent me Luke Irby's entire library. And I've got some of the Waring archives in my house as well. So it's just kind of a weird thing, but it's a great treasure to me. Finding texts. Oh my gravy. Buy those old hymn books. I go to Europe and I go to the libraries and I buy old hymn books and things. And you'll find one verse in the middle of an old hymn that hadn't been heard in 200 years and just killer. And there's that phrase, there's that hook. Listen with your heart. Oh, I'm going to write that. You know, I don't know that I think that was my own idea, believe it or not, but there'll be a line, and I just read hymns all the time. I send her to the garage. It's just lined with file cabinets, and they're all either alphabetized or subject. You know, one of these days we'll probably scan them all and make them digital, and so I can make it available to everybody else. But there's copyright issues about things like that. So, but it's the way I do my research. And in the morning before the day starts, I get up at about 5:30, something like that. I'll start with some of that as part of a devotional moment for me, and that just grows out of, you know, holding the word or a great text close to your heart, and it just melts into melody at some point. And I get started. And I typically try to write with words in mind, because, like, I could just tell last night when Craig was, when we were doing that piece of Craig's, it just felt like he knew exactly where to pull the trigger on those words. Just the way the scansion of the lyric fell down, you know, oh, Jesus, or whatever the word was, 2-syllable word, and he would find those moments, and the melody just seemed to fall from the words. And that's what I love about Craig's work. Very organic in that regard, the marriage of lyric and melody. Sometimes I don't have that luxury because I'm working with a pre-existent tune, but I'm learning to reverse that process pretty well, because you can do it both ways. Anybody else?
Jim Jackson, First Baptist Church in Uvalde, Texas. I've written pieces over the years just for the church or just for a certain situation. My children's weddings, both of them, we wrote songs for them. But going back to the hymns, is there a need for new tunes for old hymns?
Yes. Yeah, resettings, hymn resettings is a category we have. And it's a way of retooling the power of some of those texts that have been, I mean, I grew up Baptist, and, you know, one of my early big hits was called Coming Home. And, you know, I wandered far away from God, now I'm coming home, you know, that we used to sing it, and that was a Sunday night invitation hymn.
Yeah.
And I decided to, it's such a sad little text. I mean, it's the moment of repentance of the prodigal son. And so I set that in a completely different, almost like a soundtrack, cinematic approach, where he's coming home, coming, you know, he's running across the top of the hill, you know, to be his father. And that was my vision for it. And it just took off. And that's one of my big hits, and it's a resetting of a hymn. And I think it's because people didn't ever really, they sung it by rote so many times, they had not really considered the power of the text in a long time. And that's, I'm not the only one who have done that. There are Mark Hayes' Amazing Grace to Wally Wally for Beckett, which has sold 500,000 copies. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost. And just putting it in a different, you would think you could make Amazing Grace better. Well, he didn't make it better, he just made it different for a moment. And making that is another example of a successful version of that. And we've already sold out of More Love to Thee, O Christ, the Tim Shaw piece that we did in the first reading session.
Wow,
Stack's gone.
that was good.
Yeah, it was very, very good. It's a resetting of a very standard hymn.
Exactly.
And so, yes, answered your question. No, and that's a good place, too, about, oh yeah, Greg, you were talking about looking for texts. Writing to a hymn, there is a scaffolding there of logical phrase lengths and things like that. So I do recommend, as you're beginning your process of finding maybe your own original lyrics and things, to use hymnody as a scaffold or a template, if you will, to lay your melodies on. Very useful from just a writing process.
Even just practice.
Yeah, just for practice, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, my final parting cry to you, just do it all the time. You're not going to get it right the first time. If it was, everybody out there would be writing, and this room would be going, hey, it's just Joe, he's just another one of us. But you have to do it over and over and over. You have to fail again, and then fail better. And that's what it is. It's rewrite, over and over again. So don't love it so much that you can't see this as a stepping stone to that next piece. That's how you have to do it. It's done that way.